Good afternoon and welcome to Bull Markets Talk Show. This is your host, Rian Hobson, and we have one epic show today with Brad Alexander. But first, before I get to Brad, gas prices actually moved up by 10% yesterday, or over 10%. At one point, it was actually at 11%. And then we have crude oil that was up by 2%. And actually, as I look at it now, it's actually nearly again at 1%. So I will definitely not keep you long because there is a huge problem in the UK, and I will be with Brad Alexander. He is actually the CEO of FxLarge. He has a YouTube page. I actually put the link below. Brad has enormous amount of experience in the FX markets, and when I asked him the question, when did he start to trade with FX, he was saying, listen, since the 90s. So you can imagine that I'm still a kid when it gets to that. I will be with Brad to discuss the UK problem after the break.
Keep your finger on the market pulse with the News Alerts tool. Stay up to date on the latest sentiment across all the major asset classes. Uncover bullish or bearish signals tied to specific assets that could be developing before major price moves, and track how news sentiment correlated with price in the past. Track the news volume on an asset, its fear index, and get a better feel for its underlying strength. All with News Alerts, your central hub for market information. That's higher trading from MarketsX.
Hi, Brad. How are you?
I'm good, Rian. How are you? Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks a lot, Brad. Please explain what is the current situation in the UK with the oil future, with the shortage of oil?
Well, first, let's clarify. There's no shortage of petrol, as they say in the UK, or oil. That's not on. I mean, the oil companies are saying it. Boris Johnson's saying it. The problem is not any kind of shortage of gas or petrol or whatever you want to call it. The problem is the distribution. It's quite simple. There are a serious lack of HGV drivers, heavy good vehicle drivers in the UK. If I were a truck driver now, I'd be hiring an agent. I think you're gonna have a lot of people coming out of retirement and becoming truck drivers at really, really good money. So that's the issue. It's distribution. And I've spent a quarter of my life in London. I consider myself a Londoner, even though I live in Marbella right now. Obviously, right now I'm glad I'm not there for a few reasons. The weather here is much, much nicer, and I've got lots of petrol in my car, in my light car. There's no problem here. The prices are creeping up, but that's normal all over the world. So it's a distribution problem. I know we talked yesterday with Andrew about the military is on standby now to supply truck drivers. They're looking at offering X amount of thousands of visa dispensations for European truck drivers to come in. So it's a problem that needs to be sorted very, very quickly. And the other side of the coin, and we just talked about this before the show, is the media is winding everybody up. So then there's panic buying, and people are queuing up outside petrol stations, trying to get their petrol. I've been watching the news from London, and they're saying we can't get a taxi. You go outside, and this is like the city of London. Yeah. People on Bloomberg, and they just can't get a taxi because the taxis don't have any petrol to run their cars. So it's a big mess. I think they'll get it sorted relatively quickly. But the fear I've got is not so much wage inflation by these drivers getting lots and lots of money. It's getting people who don't understand how difficult it is to drive a large vehicle through the streets of London looking for petrol stations. This is not something where you can say, okay, let's turn this cab driver into a truck driver. It's not that simple. This is why I think the military option is probably a better bet for the next few weeks. They're talking about training people, which is going to take weeks and weeks to get them up and rolling. If there are European drivers that can come in and do the job, great. But let's see what happens. But meanwhile, there's a media frenzy, which I think is probably more dangerous than the actual problem with the petrol. But that's human nature, isn't it?
Correct. And with the truck driver, obviously they said about the army that's going to come in, and but will the Europe, because obviously there's Brexit that is going on, which is a different story on its own.
That's actually probably the root cause of it, because a lot of not just truck drivers did actually leave the UK in the last couple of years to to go back to their homes in various European countries. So sorry to interrupt, Rian, but that's the Brexit is definitely part of the story here.
So if Brexit is part of the story, because there was a media report in South Africa that goes around that said there's actually about a shortage of about between 100,000 people that needs to be on trucks in the UK, and they said that is actually the shortage. So I don't know if that is true, because there's quite a lot of stories running around.
I honestly don't know the actual number. I wouldn't want to dispute that. It's a small country, but there's 60 million some odd people in there with, lots and lots of petrol stations and cars. I spent my time in London, and I left my car parked, outside the house all week, and then I use it on the weekends. But, that's as a Londoner, because the transportation system is so good. Obviously, the rest of the country outside of the cities, you need to be able to move around. That goes without saying. But yeah, it's a Brexit story, and it's a pandemic story, and it's, you could say poor planning. I mean, I had a discussion yesterday about this, and is it poor planning? But the thing is, if this had happened 2 months ago, and they said, let's bring the European Union drivers back in, well, they couldn't come in because the UK was having restrictions about COVID. So you've got these massive chicken and egg things going on here. Now you can, if you've got the 2 vaccinations and you've got a negative test, you can enter the UK. I mean, I've been dying to go back for quite a while, and I haven't been able to. I'm going back in November, and hopefully my little QR code and my test will be good enough to get me into the country. But 2 or 3 months ago, if you wanted a driver to come in to do anything, it would have been very, very difficult. So we're in a situation globally that is a big problem, Olaf Scholz yesterday made it quite clear. There was he was giving a press conference, and whether Olaf Scholz will be the next chancellor of Germany, probably, we don't know yet. We'll see. But obviously, he's going to be. People are listening to him. And a British reporter asked him in English, "Are you going to be sending drivers to the UK to help out with the distribution problem with petrol?" And the whole room sort of laughed, and he basically said very politely, "It's not my problem." But he did say that, you guys, the UK left the union, so what can we do? This is your fault. This is your problem. He said it much more eloquently than that, but it was basically the way he said it. And I'm sure a lot of European leaders, and especially Macron, he's not in favor right now with Boris Johnson, and vice versa, are saying the same thing. Is it a Brexit story? Is it a pandemic story? And I'm going to jump sideways a bit here. There's the same problem happening around in California, the Los Angeles area. They've got massive problems in the docks. If they can actually get the containers into the docks, there are not enough drivers to get the stuff out of the containers and into the distribution channel. So if you start Googling, you'll find the same problem all over the world. Again, Brexit and the pandemic, definitely factored into the story.
Everything. So do you think that there will become other problems? Because obviously, if fuel is a problem, because as you said, there will be a distribution problem. Will it lead to food shortages and all other stuff, which is a possibility, isn't it?
Well, and exactly. And this is one thing that I think hopefully is, well, it's not good, is unique to the UK, is they physically can't get enough CO2, which is important in the frozen food business, which is causing or could cause more food shortages in the UK. But that's frozen food. People are here. I live in southern Spain. There's a big expat community, and they're saying, "Oh, we're going to get hit." And I said, "Well, probably not, because we've got access to every other European market. We can get stuff, and there seems to be no prices are going up without a doubt." Even my wife went out yesterday morning to buy paint. She says, "Oh, it's gone up. This has gone up. That's gone up. Petrol's gone up." I know people who are running businesses here, and they're saying their suppliers are increasing prices, and there's no end in sight. But because of the pandemic, we've got supply side issues. A great statistic or a bad statistic, Nike were saying last week, they can usually count on a pair of shoes leaving the factory in China and being, let's say, on the shelf in the United States in 40 days. Now it's 80 days. Okay. So whether that's from putting the shoelaces into showing it to a customer, whether it's 40 or I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's doubled. And off of the port of Los Angeles, as I mentioned earlier, they're breaking records. Ships are waiting out there for 9 days, and that's not normal. That's way too long. Then coming in, and as I said earlier, finally get the ship in. There's not enough people to unload it. There aren't enough drivers to get the stuff around, and that's not a Brexit story. That's in California. That's a pandemic labor shortage, and because we've had how many months and years of social distancing and so forth. So then we get into liquid natural gas.
Correct, because that is actually what I actually just wanted to ask you. Because
no,
you're absolutely spot on. Because we are approaching, or the Europeans, or especially people in the UK, are approaching also winter, and there's a story also with gas. Do you think that they will actually solve that problem before actually the winter hits?
That's a tricky one, and one of the things that is unique about natural gas is storage. With oil you can store it. I mean, we remember a year and a half ago we had that negative, minus $40 a barrel March future. Was it March, or it doesn't matter which future it was, because there was no place to put the stuff. There was too much oil, and Cushing was full. I wrote a blog about that. A lot of people were scared to go long on oil because they thought it would happen the next month, but it didn't. In fact, what they did is the Americans just filled up as many ships as they could, and as far as I know, sent them off to South Africa to store their crude. So you may have seen them going past your house. I don't know. So that actually fixed that problem. So the next contract, went from minus 40 up to sort of 20 or 15, and now we're back to we're in the 70s and 80s, depending whether it's your flavor is WTI or Brent. Anyway, so getting back to about your question, so there's an example of storing. You can storing coal, which we don't want to do anyway. Storing crude, but natural gas is a different kettle of fish. And whether you have a problem getting it because of the pandemic, but then where do you put it? The only place right now that has no problem with storing and having natural gas is what they call east of the Rockies in the United States. West of the Rockies is a problem, but east of the Rockies, they've got tons and tons of, literally in the ground, cavern space, they call it, to store natural gas. Right. Everywhere else in the world, it's a problem. In fact, we heard 2 weeks ago, Vladimir Putin saying, "Oh, we may not have enough natural gas to supply to the Ukraine," which, come on. That's not a supply problem. That's a political thing. So we'll tell you what, let's not go down that road. But yeah, will it be sorted by this winter? That's a tricky one. And I think, we'll just have to see whether it gets political or not, because this is, and you just talked about this, and we looked at it yesterday on Dot Financial News. I think Andrew Sachs McLeod as well was showing the price of natural gas shooting up.
Correct.
I mean, I use natural gas, but we go out and buy containers of it. So I'll let you know what happens, because it used to be 13 euros for a bombina, they call it. So I'll let you know next week what the price is when I go change the canister for my barbecue. How's that? But no, we live in the country, so we can't get a natural gas feed, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 5 natural gas containers around the house for the the stove and heaters and things like that. So which we'll need for the winter.
The thing is also, because obviously you need now storage also for the natural gas. Obviously you need truck drivers also to move the things around, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends where you are. I mean, as I say here, in many countries, they actually drive the actual containers around.
Correct.
In most areas in the world, it's actually built into the ground. You've got feeds into the towns and so forth. Okay. I mean, literally, like I say, I live in a rural area outside of Marbella, and if I go down to the end of my road, I can see the yellow posts where they demark the gas line running into town. We don't get that, but that's life. So it's probably less of a driver's issue, but yeah, there will be some natural gas that will need to be sent around.
Absolutely. And just for interesting sake, now that obviously we can expect some inflation in the UK, what do you think? What was going to happen with the central bank or the Bank of England? Will it actually shift their policy stance now, or being actually more on quantitative easing, basically all over the world, where they push a lot of money into the system? Do you think this will put on the brakes?
Well, they're going to have to, and also, but there are two things. When you've got inflation like this, and as I mentioned earlier, you've got supply inflation, you have different flavors of inflation. It used to be that currency inflation was bad, and what still is. Supply inflation or demand inflation was bad. Wage inflation was good. Now the rules are sort of changing, because wage inflation is going to have to be passed on to the consumer anyway, but not really the good kind. That may, like anything, may calm down. I mean, it used to be we were paying, programmers and coders like some crazy amounts of money. Now, then the school started pumping out graduates who could actually do coding, and the prices, the wages came down.
Correct.
We're going to have that. I mean, hospitality workers are coming back to work when they come off their benefits, and they're getting really good money because there's a shortage. Obviously, truck drivers, we're beating that story to death, and they could command great amounts of money for the next little while. But you're going to have obviously supply inflation, wage inflation. I mean, we talked about the ports in say Los Angeles. I mean, right now in China, they're shutting down ports because of COVID, which is going to cause delivery problems. And Christmas is coming up. Everybody wants to get their stuff on the, so that's going to hit retail sales, which is going to cause more consumer confidence into January. So the central banks, I'm giving you a very long-winded answer to a simple question. The central banks have a very difficult job. I mean, they can raise interest rates to try and mitigate inflation, but they can't fix the pandemic. They can't open the ports. They can't fix the semiconductor problem. They can only do what they do with the tools that they've got. So I don't, and I say Bank of England, I mean, it's all of them. It's Jay Powell, it's Christine Lagarde, it's every central bank in the world who has an issue. Then they have to, and it's funny, I was chatting with someone yesterday about this, you come to the conclusion, they say, well, you blame the president or prime minister of whatever country and blame the central bank. But the thing is, we are in territories now that are totally uncharted. Brexit was difficult enough, but then you throw in the pandemic, and now, we're trying to get through the pandemic, and everybody thought, oh, the economies are improving. Well, they did, but then now we've got these supply issues. So
absolutely,
it's I wouldn't want to be in a central bank shoes right now, but they have, I must say, they've done a good job so far. Keeping our heads above water. So let's see what happens. So like I say, they can fix some problems, but they can't fix all the problems.
Absolutely. Because the last time when I was reading the monetary policy, or the comments that was made there, they expect, the Bank of England expect about a 4% inflation by the end of this year. With all the problems that there's now there in England, do you think that is possible?
I think it's definitely
possible. Do you think it can overshoot?
Look, central banks like 2%. They like to see 2% inflation. That's just the way it is. And 4% obviously is way too much. But there are reasons, as we've been discussing over the last little while, there are reasons for those that inflation. And, the Fed, for example, up until recently, have been saying, oh, it's transitory, it's temporary. Well, then they've had to change their definition of temporary because of all the things that we just talked about. So,
correct.
So is temporary 3 months suddenly becoming 2 years? This is going to be the problem.
Absolutely.
And what we've seen so far since the beginning of the pandemic, which I think a lot of people don't realize, is that the enthusiasm of the people with money, the investors, they're still investing in the stock market. If they had decided to pull their money out back in March of 2020, we'd be looking at a very, very different story. But guys like Bill Ackman came on, and said, look, we are bullish on the American economy. We're going to buy the dip. And a lot of people, I mean, I'm going to be really honest with you. I cashed in some bonds when the market was high during the pandemic, and I shifted it all to tech and pharma companies. And that did a very good, a good trade, an excellent trade, which I'll be honest with you, is one reason we're living in Spain right now. There are other reasons for that, but so that worked out really well. And probably in 3 to 5 years, we'll look at it again when it's all very nice and fluffy. We avoided all the airlines and hotel chains for obvious reasons, and put the money where we thought it was going to grow. And we were it was an easy trade. It was quite
Exactly.
right. But anyway, the point I'm making is that a lot of people thought the same way. And if you've been following my videos, and I say buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip, and if you look at the a 1-year chart on any of the Nasdaq, the S&P, there are all these beautiful dips that go along and along. It's only the last one that really hasn't worked out perfectly to the, if you're from a technical analysis standpoint, but it's still coming up. And this is what investors have been doing, is buying the dip. So they've been pumping money in. They have enthusiasm and confidence in companies to keep going. If that hadn't happened, we'd all be in a really different situation right now. Never mind the central banks, never mind vaccines. So I think that's something that people need to, I don't say get on your hands and knees and pray to the guys with the money, or whatever, bow to the guys with the money. But the thing is, these guys, and I'm going to say it again, have invested back in the stock market. A lot of people saw the COVID crash as an opportunity to buy, not an opportunity to get the heck out and run. So, and that helped the central banks, and that helped the rest of the economy. So, that's one, well, I hate to say a positive thing that came out of COVID, but that is a very good thing that they've invested the money back in the stock market. They've been going back and forth, as you're in the here in the business, the stock market, bonds, gold, yen. Where do I go? Where's the safe haven? Oh, things are better. I'm going here. The fact is, and because interest rates are so low right now, cash is bad, which is another incentive to put money back in the stock market. So it's all, it's not all wonderful, but.
So as you were saying, so you are more bullish with the stock market, even with all these problems that are going on in the world.
Well, look at the charts. It's just, it just keeps going up. It's not going to go up forever. Right now, where are my trades? No, I'm long on the S&P, and I'm going to stay there for a while until it gets back to the high from a few weeks ago. What can one say? And the only thing that's going to, there are things that are going to slow that down. And we talked about the central banks. If the White House or it doesn't matter, White House, any government increases taxes, that always hurts corporations, and you get a dip. Raising interest rates, you've got, take the United States, you've got the executive branch, which is, the White House, who could raise taxes. But you've also got the Fed, who could raise interest rates. And those things, but that's normal. That's totally normal. If you raise interest rates, it's going to hurt the corporations. Their share prices will drop. Investors will make a decision. Hey, thanks for the bargain. I'm going to pile back in again, hopefully. So it's all moving normally. I think look at the chart.
But the confidence is enormous.
It is. It's good. Obviously, it's fair.
Fair enough. But the mess is basically all over. Shortages is just actually the media just taking over with the UK. Where do you see the British pound actually? Because as you said, there will be wage inflation that will definitely go up. Inflation in general will go up. Do you think the pound will actually do better against other major currencies?
It's been doing much better, in the last couple of years, for once Brexit. Like anything, the word uncertainty. So during the Scottish referendum and during Brexit and all this, everything else that was going on, there was uncertainty, and that is worse. Not knowing is worse than having a problem. You've seen it. So now, at least now they know the problem. I'm not saying it's going to make the pound stronger or weaker. But the fact that you have, and you've seen this since the beginning of time. I go back to when I was a kid and growing up in Canada. There was a big problem for years with the fact that, or the idea that Quebec might separate from Canada. It didn't happen, but there was that uncertainty. So there was a lot of investment that could have gone into Canada that didn't. And once that was sorted out, it all changed. And it's the same with the UK. You had, Scottish referendum, then you had Brexit. So there was that uncertainty, and that's just normal in the markets. Investors hate uncertainty. Is it going to resolve itself well, or is it resolve itself badly? I don't know. The fact is, I'm leaving my money somewhere else. That's the definition of uncertainty, really. So I think now there are issues in the UK. I say we. I don't.
Yeah.
I still hold a UK passport and I still have property in London, but they still have problems. Obviously, we've just been talking about them, but at least they can identify the problems. They can identify solutions, and it's up to investors to decide, what they want to do in the UK. There's a lot of stuff coming on board right now. I mean, people will be building battery factories all over the world for everything,
Absolutely.
for storage, for cars, and now we've got an issue with natural gas. Well, that's not so good anymore, So I think that, and climate change. Wow,
Yeah.
you need. It's great to say, okay, we're going to do this with energy, whether it's nuclear, whether it's natural gas, whether it's whatever, but the issue is storage. And if you're getting into, which we are obviously as a planet, battery powered, whatever, you need some place to store it. You produce it. Okay, producing wind energy is fantastic. But what if it's not a windy day? What you want to do is to be able to, get the energy on a windy day, store it somewhere in a massive, and this, they're working on this and they're doing this.
Correct.
Elon Musk is, doing wonderful things like that.
Correct.
Storing it for the say rainy day, but the non-windy days. And that's what we need to do. So, but that's a massive, massive industry, a huge industry unto itself. And you need all the the metals and so forth, was it, cobalt, lithium, whatever, to make these batteries.
So as you were saying, it sounds to me like more that you are very bullish still on the commodities, because as you said, there's problems, fine. So you need to get the solutions, and obviously the problems that we're sitting with, it's natural gas, which is one of them in the UK, or actually I would say in the West. Crude oil is also now been shooting through the air. Are you bullish on commodities? For the short term, maybe for the end of this year?
For the short term, definitely. And again, crude oil is a supply and demand story. It's as simple as that. I mean, these days we're making less and less plastics, which is going to decrease the demand in that area, which is good. And again, we're looking at electric cars. I mean, Andrew Sachs yesterday was talking on Andrew Moreno's show, Dot Financial News. Basically looking at, and he's putting himself in the position of the big car companies, Ford, GM, whatever. Yeah. And his theory was, and he's probably correct, they're all sitting back waiting to see what happens with Tesla. Is there really a market? Is there really, and if Elon Musk and Tesla can do well, they say, okay, because these guys are massive. Obviously, they're, multi-billion dollar, pound, euro companies who can jump into action and make electric cars. And, once they've convinced themselves, which I think they have, that the electric car business is the place to be, then that's going to spur a lot of other things. So that will obviously diminish the, the demand for crude.
Correct.
And until we make electric airplanes and jets, then crude is still going to be, required, but it will be diminishing over years and decades. Okay. By the end of the year, it's not going to be diminishing that much. Right now, it's, Goldman Sachs are saying it's going to go to $90, and and they said it was going to go to 80, and nobody believed them. And now Brent crude is at 80 as of this morning. So we all hate to say, look back a few months ago and say, oh darn, Goldman Sachs was right. It's not the first time. It's not the first time they've been right. I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, I was looking at oil going to 70 by the end of the year, and it's there now. WTI, I should say. So bullish on commodities. I mean, it also depends which commodity. I mean,
correct.
Once we get through the pandemic, I think copper is still, is going to go up. All the metals required for making batteries, lithium, very, very important to keep an eye on, if not trade.
Right. Just the last question before we go. Gold, because gold is a bit of a headache. Where do you think maybe will gold go? If you could just give a hint where gold can go maybe before the end of the year.
I've always been a gold bear, and if you caught my video this morning, I was looking at some technical analysis, looking at some chart patterns, interesting chart patterns happening on gold. I mean, gold, as you know, is one of those things. If nothing bad happens, it's going to go down, because it's not a commodity that we actually build things out of. I mean, no, we do, but it's a safe haven for investors. I don't have to tell you that. So as long as there are no sort of international conflicts, we can all remain calm on the planet, gold in theory should be falling back into, I mean, if you look at the last level of support, what was it, 1680? I remember.
Correct.
1670.
1680.
Right?
Yeah, correct. You're right.
1680. Yeah. So, you know, I can see it going there by the end of the year. But then I guess it's like anything. You know, all you need to do is have some nation seize an oil tanker in the Gulf of Hormuz, or you know, if someone decides to invade Crimea again. No, seriously, you know, that's going to affect gold more than, you know, you say gold is a commodity, but it's not the same as the other boys and girls, is it? You know, so.
Yeah, right. No, I absolutely agree. Brett, thanks a lot for sharing your views. I hope I can get you on again on the show.
No, I enjoyed that. Yeah,
an absolute pleasure.
Anytime. I've got to go and get back to work, but thanks for having me, Rian, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, Brett.
Bye-bye.
That was Brett Alexander.